The sound of the garage door groaned open and echoed through the stillness of the house like a warning bell. I stepped inside and inhaled the familiar scent, cedar dust, and a faint trace of lavender from the diffuser Delilah insisted on placing in the foyer. Everything looked the same, yet felt off, like someone had walked through the rooms while I was away and realigned things just enough to disturb the energy. Our framed wedding photos still sat on the mantel. Her smile in that picture used to calm me. Lately, it felt like a stranger looking back. Delilah and I met at a design expo in Seattle. She was bold, confident, wore red lipstick like armor, and smiled with her entire face. For years, I thought I'd won the emotional lottery. We shared wine on rooftops, made midnight pancake runs, and even worked on a couple of design projects together before she shifted careers. When she joined a high-end branding firm 3 years ago, I cheered her on. We celebrated her first solo client with champagne in the tub. No. Now she doesn't answer my calls until midnight and comes home smelling like someone else's cologne masked beneath hotel soap. She claimed it was work, managing late-night accounts. I didn't press at first. I respected her grind. But as weeks turned into months, the lies grew louder in the quiet. I noticed the signs, subtle at first. Her phone always face down, laughter behind bathroom doors. She stopped looking me in the eye when I asked about her day. And when she smiled, it wasn't the kind that reached her eyes. It was the kind you give a stranger on a plane, the obligatory polite flicker that meant nothing. I tried to chalk it up to stress, work fatigue, maybe even seasonal depression. Portland winters could gnaw at the bones of even the strongest relationships. But this wasn't seasonal. This was something else, something colder, something calculated. One night about 2 weeks ago, I woke up to find her missing from the bed. It was 2:14 a.m. I remember the exact time because I sat there staring at the red digits, feeling like they were counting down to something. I padded through the house barefoot, the hardwood floors cold against my soles. I found her in the kitchen, whispering into her phone. The second she saw me, she ended the call, said she couldn't sleep and was ordering tea. But there was no kettle, no mug, just her hand shaking slightly as she placed the phone down, screen still dark, side up. "Everything okay?" I asked. She nodded too quickly, brushing past me like I was a breeze instead of a man she used to wrap herself around like a blanket. That's when I knew. I didn't have proof. Not yet. But the truth was already building inside me like a structure I couldn't undesign. My career was built on precision, on sensing tension in lines, weight and beams, strain and steel. I built towers meant to withstand wind, time, and tremors. And I could feel the tremors now in every room and every glance she refused to give me, and every night she stayed out working. A few days later, I checked our shared bank statements. There were charges I couldn't explain, hotel lounges, high-end restaurants she never mentioned, ride-share pickups from addresses I didn't recognize. And then there were gaps, long stretches of time where her phone would ring, once then go straight to voicemail. She always had an excuse. Bad reception, client meetings, I forgot to charge it. But her battery was never low when she texted me pictures of her salads and office views. I'm not a paranoid man. If anything, I've been guilty of giving too much benefit of the doubt, but even patience has a breaking point. And I'd reached mine. I started documenting, quietly, thoroughly, like an architect measuring the cracks before a collapse. The final straw was the photo I found on her iPad. She hadn't logged out of her iCloud. And one evening, while looking up a blueprint from an old project, I saw it. A selfie of Delilah in a dimly lit room, a bed behind her. Her lips parted just slightly in a way I hadn't seen in months. I zoomed in and saw a shadow, half a man's face beside her, sleeping or pretending to be. She had labeled the album Past. Still, I sat there for a full hour staring at that photo. Not angry, not broken, just still, like a man surveying the aftermath of an earthquake. I hadn't lost everything. Not yet. But the damage was real, and it was spreading. So I did what I've always done when structures threatened to fall. I prepared. I mapped every crack, traced every fault line, and I promised myself this. If she thought she could take me down quietly, she was about to learn the difference between silence and strength. This wasn't the storm. Not yet. This was the quiet before it. I sat in the garage that night, the cold air pressing through the seams of the door, surrounding me like truth I could no longer ignore. The photo on Delilah's iPad wouldn't leave my mind. Her body curved toward that shadow of a man, like she was resting in a place that had once belonged to me. The caption, "Past due." It wasn't just a clever label. It was an announcement, an expiration notice on a marriage I thought still had breath. So I did what I never imagined I'd do. I crossed the line between trust and confirmation. I tapped her phone. It wasn't out of vengeance. Not yet. It was survival, the kind of move a man makes when everything around him starts cracking, and he's got two options: either reinforce the beams or let the whole damn thing cave in. I knew someone who could help, a former client turned cybersecurity consultant. Quiet guy, owed me a favor. I asked him for a discreet app, one that would mirror Delilah's messages, calls, even her location, without her ever knowing. He sent me a link, instructions, and a warning. Once you open that door, he said, you can't unsee what's behind it. He was right. The messages rolled in faster than I could read them. Hundreds of them. Thousands, actually, if you scrolled far enough. Her phone was a diary with no lock, just confession after confession, bleeding through emojis and late-night timing. At first, it was just names. Trey T. Then full signatures. Trey Montgomery. That name made me pause. I remembered him from an old photo album Delilah once pulled out during our first year together. Her high school ex, the football star turned startup dropout. She said he broke her heart, said he made her feel disposable. Apparently, history has a strange sense of humor. Their conversations were a digital affair built on nostalgia and heat. Flirtation dripped from every line like sweat off a cheap motel mattress. There were old photos exchanged, jokes about teachers they hated, confessions about how they'd always still think of each other, and then it got worse, much worse. I can't wait to wake up beside you again. This time we do it right. Once the house is sold, we're set. Start fresh. New city, new name. Just us. I froze. The house sold? That line repeated in my head like a malfunctioning loop. My house, the one I built from the ground up. I chose the flooring. I installed every ceiling beam. Hell, I planted the tree in the front yard the week we moved in. And she was planning to sell it without me while sleeping with a man who used to leave love notes in her locker. I sat there, phone in hand, chest tightening around each syllable she wrote. It wasn't just betrayal, it was strategy. She wasn't escaping a bad marriage. She was stealing from it, ripping it apart for parts, and cashing in the salvage. There was a message she sent to Trey just 3 days ago that hit me like a punch to the ribs. Once he signs those papers, it's ours. I'll make it look clean. Papers I hadn't signed a damn thing. I hadn't even seen a listing agreement. But then again, maybe I wasn't meant to. Maybe she planned to fake it, forge it, slide it through the system like it was legitimate. People underestimate how fast and quiet fraud can be when no one's watching. I closed the app. I couldn't read anymore. I couldn't sit still either. I paced the length of the garage, then the hallway, then back into the living room where our wedding photo still mocked me from the mantel. Her smile in that photo was real once. I believed it. I built a decade of my life around it. But looking at it now, all I saw was the beginning of a lie dressed in ivory lace. My instincts kicked in, reflexes built from years of spotting structural weaknesses before they turned deadly. This wasn't just emotional damage anymore. This was legal. This was theft. And I wasn't going to wait for her to finish the job. I opened a note on my phone and began logging everything. Dates, times, screenshots, quotes. I labeled folders, backed up copies, started a paper trail she wouldn't be able to erase. I knew what I was doing could get messy, but I didn't care. I wasn't about to let the woman I built a life with tear it down for someone who peaked at prom. By midnight, I had a plan, a quiet one that didn't involve confrontation. Not yet. She was playing chess with a man she thought would never move a piece. It was time I proved her wrong. I wouldn't yell, I wouldn't beg. I'd do what I do best, measure the weight, test the foundation, and respond with something stronger than rage. Precision. Delilah thought I wasn't watching, but I always notice every shift, every crack, every sign of stress before collapse. No, I was going to make sure when the storm hit, I wasn't the one standing under rubble. I'd be the one holding the blueprint. I've always believed that when betrayal is quiet, justice should be quieter. That night, after hours of watching Delilah's treachery unfold in message after message, I didn't drink, I didn't scream, I didn't even call her out. I just sat in the dark with my thoughts until the shadows on the ceiling blurred into one, and a single name came to me. Marcus Reyes. Marcus and I go way back before suits and blueprints. We met when I was 22 and stupid, helping my cousin with a side job he swore was low risk. Marcus was the guy who bailed us out when things got hot. While I went on to build bridges and homes, he spent a decade learning how to survive on the margins. When he came out of prison, he didn't want sympathy. He wanted a second shot. I helped him get his real estate license. In return, he swore he'd always be in my corner. That kind of loyalty, you don't buy it, you earn it. I didn't need a friend right now. I needed a ghost. Someone who could get close to Delilah without raising suspicion. Someone slick enough to bait her, read her, and make her believe she was still the smartest person in the room. Marcus was that guy. I called him the next morning. I need a favor, I said. He didn't even hesitate. What's the play? I laid it out. How she'd been seeing her ex, planning to sell the house, maybe even forging my signature. I told him about the messages, the plans to disappear, the fake charm she put on around everyone else. He didn't sound surprised. You want her to bite? He said. You want her to believe the trap is a gift. Exactly. He laughed. Then I'm your man. 2 days later, Marcus walked into the bar at the Riverford Hotel, where I knew from her messages she liked to meet clients. He looked every bit the part. Pressed slacks, a watch with a heavy face, that quiet air of money that doesn't need to prove itself. He texted me when she arrived. Got her in sight. Red dress, gold hoops. She's sipping something expensive and bored. I watched it unfold through the grainy but steady stream of the hotel security feed, courtesy of a favor I cashed in with one of my commercial clients. Marcus slid into the seat beside her with ease like they were old acquaintances. He didn't hit on her, didn't push, just struck up a conversation about high-end properties and how he was scouting discreet listings for a wealthy international client who was looking to invest quietly in Portland real estate. Delilah's interest lit up like a neon sign. She leaned in, laughed in that way she reserves for men she thinks she can outmaneuver. She told him about a unique opportunity, a beautiful house recently vacated, not yet listed but available for the right buyer, off-market, clean, fast. Show me, he said. She didn't even blink. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through photos she'd taken of our home. Wide shots of the backyard, the kitchen island, even the master bath with the lights dimmed just right. She'd staged it, probably while I was on my last business trip. My throat tightened. The intimacy of that betrayal wasn't in the photos. It was in the effort, the planning. Marcus nodded along. My client could offer $2 million, he said casually. Cash, but they'd want discretion. Delilah's eyes practically danced. Discretion, she said, is my specialty. I had to pause the video at that. For a moment, I didn't feel rage. I felt awe, like watching someone do a high-wire act over a canyon without a harness. She was good, too good. And if I hadn't known the truth, I might have believed her too. That night, Marcus called me. She's in, he said, wants to move quick. Said she'll send documents through email. Told me to keep the husband out of it. My stomach turned. She's not scared? He snorted. Nope. She thinks she's got it under control. Thinks she's outsmarting everyone. Told me her sister can notarize everything. Said it'll be seamless. Simone, I muttered. Of course. Simone had always been the family screw-up turned sketchy entrepreneur. She was the kind of person who knew how to bend the law just short of breaking it, unless someone pushed. Apparently, Delilah pushed. We ended the call with a plan. Marcus would play along, set up a fake transaction, and deliver a phony cashier's check. Meanwhile, I'd loop in my lawyer and a detective friend. No confrontation, no warning shots, just silence and strategy. Delilah didn't know she was walking into a performance designed specifically for her. She didn't know every smile Marcus gave was rehearsed, every nod part of a script. She thought she was the puppet master. She had no idea she'd already stepped onto my stage. The shadows I used to fear weren't hiding anything anymore. They were working for me now. And the woman I once promised forever to, she was about to find out what it felt like to be out-designed by the man she tried to steal from. The email came 2 days later. No subject line, just an attachment and a one-line message from Delilah. Tell your client it's ready. I clicked it open with hands steadier than they should have been. A PDF document unfolded on my screen. The detour home, fully signed, dated, and notarized. My name scrolled beside hers in that confident, looping cursive I'd used for years. Only I hadn't signed a thing. I stared at it for a long time, longer than I needed to. Not because I was shocked, I'd been expecting it, but because the detail was so disturbingly exact. She'd copied everything. The subtle tilt in my G, the broken loop in the H of Holt. If I hadn't known better, I might have believed it was mine. But I knew my own hand, and I knew who'd forged it. Simone. Her sister had always been the black sheep of their pristine family, cast out not for rebellion, but for being too bold, too unapologetically crooked. She ran a design consulting business that was nothing more than a front for digital forgery and shady paperwork. I'd warned Delilah once about keeping Simone involved in our lives. She laughed and said Simone just needed structure. Yet the irony wasn't lost on me. I forwarded the document to Heather Wynn, my attorney. We'd gone to college together. She graduated top of our class and had a fire for justice I'd always admired. I didn't need someone emotional on this case. I needed someone surgical. Heather replied 5 minutes later, "This is airtight fraud, we've got her." Next, I reached out to Jalen Cruz, my contact at the Portland Police Department. We weren't close, but years ago, I'd helped design the expansion to his precinct's training facility, and he remembered me well. "I'll open the file personally," he promised. "We'll treat this as a case of felony forgery and attempted real estate fraud. Keep feeding me everything." So I did. Every document, every message, every screenshot from Delilah's phone app. I built a case folder that could sink a small empire. Meanwhile, Marcus played his part like a seasoned actor. He arranged a meetup with Delilah to close the deal. Neutral ground, neutral tone. She picked a hotel bar again, said she liked the ambiance, said she didn't want paper trails. She showed up in heels, red lipstick, and sunglasses, like some movie star pulling off a getaway scene. Marcus had already wired himself with a hidden cam on his lapel, feeding live footage to me and Heather. I watched from a tablet in my car parked across the street, heart thudding with that strange mix of rage and fascination. Delilah handed him the packet, signed closing documents, notarized forms, tax records with my forged signature on all of them. "It's clean," she said with a wink. "Simone triple-checked everything. Just need the check." Marcus reached into his briefcase and pulled out a white envelope. "Certified funds," he said smoothly. $2 million flat from an overseas account. No questions asked. She took the envelope with the same care a priest might handle communion, peeked inside, smiled. "Pleasure doing business," she said. I watched her laugh, really laugh, as she slid the envelope into her purse, like she had just won a game no one else knew she was playing. But she wasn't playing. She was signing her own warrant. With devil's ink, every word, every smile, every breath from that moment forward was captured in high-definition audio and video, and she had no idea. Later that night, I met with Heather and Jalen. We sat around a conference table going over the footage. Jalen was impressed, almost disturbed, by how thorough it was. "She's not just complicit," he said. "She orchestrated this. Simone, too. That's conspiracy, forgery, attempted grand theft. You've got a slam dunk." I should have felt vindicated, maybe even proud, but I didn't. I just felt hollow, like standing in the ruins of a house I designed, knowing exactly how it fell and why, but still mourning the effort it took to build it. Heather leaned forward, tapping the paused video of Delilah's smiling face. "Are you ready for this to get public?" I nodded. "She made this a performance. I'm just pulling back the curtain." Jalen added, "We'll serve the warrant soon. Simultaneous pickup for both of them. And Griffin, we'll need you to stay out of sight for now. Let them believe they're in the clear a little longer." I agreed. I could be patient. I'd waited this long. What's another few days? That night, Delilah came home, humming to herself, wine on her breath, a lightness in her step I hadn't seen in years. She didn't speak to me, didn't even look in my direction. She went straight to the bedroom and closed the door behind her. She thought it was over. She thought she'd won. And for the first time in weeks, I slept soundly because I knew exactly how this story would end. I got back from my work trip on a Thursday. Portland skies had that usual gray smear, the kind that makes everything feel 10 shades colder than it is. I pulled into the driveway and stared at the house for a long moment before getting out. It looked the same from the outside, pristine, deceptively peaceful. But I knew better. That house wasn't just a home anymore. It was a crime scene with throw pillows. When I stepped inside, it was quiet, too quiet. No faint hum of music from Delilah's playlist. No rustling of pages from one of her coffee table magazines. Just stillness and the scent of perfume, her kind, the one with sandalwood and citrus, always lingering too long after she passed through a room. I dropped my suitcase by the door and walked into the kitchen. That's when I saw her. Delilah stood there like a woman about to board a yacht, crisp white linen pants, oversized sunglasses perched on her head, gold bangles stacked on her wrist, and a silk blouse tied at the waist. She didn't flinch when she saw me. No startled smile, no fake warmth, just a smirk tugging at the edge of her mouth like she'd been waiting for this moment. Without a word, she reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope, tossed it on the counter like it was junk mail. It landed next to the coffee machine with a dull thud. "Divorce papers," she said, that smirk sharpening into something crueler. "You can sign them now or later, doesn't matter. I already sold the house. You should thank me, really. It's a clean break. No debt, no mess. You're free to go start from scratch, Griffin." I didn't say anything, just looked at the envelope, the audacity of it, the arrogance. She mistook my silence for defeat. "I'm starting a new life without you," she continued, walking around the island and heading toward the front door like she had somewhere much better to be. "Trey's flying in next week. We're headed to Sedona to scout property. You wouldn't believe how cheap real estate is down there. It's actually inspiring. Anyway, good luck." I stared at her for 3 full seconds, and then I laughed. Not a chuckle, not a dry huff, a full, honest, from-the-gut laugh that bent me over the counter and forced me to grip the fridge for support. It started as a low rumble and then grew into something uncontrollable, something primal, like every lie she told, every shady move, every smug little moment she thought she'd gotten away with was now a joke written just for me. She stopped in her tracks. "What the hell is so funny?" I wiped my eyes and stood up straight, still chuckling. "You," I said, voice shaking from the release. "You really think you're walking out of here with the upper hand?" She blinked. The smirk faltered. "You sold the house?" I asked, pretending to catch my breath. You forged my signature? You got your disgraced sister to notarize fake documents? You handed over that mess of a file to someone you met at a bar, someone you didn't even vet, and you really think you're walking away clean? Her mouth opened, then closed. Here's the part you missed, love, I continued, stepping closer. The laugh gone now, voice calm and razor sharp. You thought I wouldn't notice? You thought I was so wrapped up in work or whatever fantasy you spun that I wouldn't see you setting the whole thing on fire? Delilah's eyes narrowed. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't, I said, cutting her off with a raised finger. Don't insult both of us with that weak play. You sold the house, huh? Funny because the man you sold it to? Marcus Reyes, my best friend. My best man, actually, if you cared to remember. Her went pale. Just a flicker at first, but I saw it. The exact moment the realization slid into place like a puzzle piece. Her hand tightened around her purse strap. The check, I added. Fake. The sale recorded on camera. The paperwork sitting on my lawyer's desk. The police already involved. Delilah stumbled back a step, as if the kitchen tile itself had shifted beneath her. You think you're untouchable, I whispered. You're not even clever. And with that, I picked up the envelope she'd tossed so carelessly, opened it, and pulled out the divorce papers. I flipped through them, noting the posturing language, the asset claims, the property line she drew like I no longer existed. Then I set them on fire. I walked to the stove, turned on the burner, and held a corner of the page against the flame. It curled and blackened quickly, the smell of scorched ink curling into the air. Delilah screamed, lunged, but I dropped the burning sheets into the sink and watched them smolder. You want a divorce? I said, meeting her eyes as smoke danced between us. You'll get one, but not on your terms. And for the first time since this whole mess began, I saw something real flicker behind her polished exterior. Fear. She didn't speak after the fire. Delilah just stood there, eyes locked on the ashes in the sink, like she couldn't believe I'd actually done it, like it hadn't occurred to her that someone could say no to her plan. She gripped her purse like it might anchor her to the moment, her breath shallow and erratic. I leaned against the counter, cool as stone, watching her squirm in the silence. I didn't need to yell. She had already heard what she needed to hear. Then, 5 minutes into the stillness, it happened. Her phone rang, a sharp, jarring tone that cut through the room like a gunshot. She startled, genuinely startled, and fumbled to dig it out of her bag. The screen lit up with a name she didn't expect. I knew she didn't expect it because she looked at the phone like it had just betrayed her. Her lips moved slightly as she read the name on the screen, Cruz. She didn't answer. She couldn't. The phone rang again. She answered it on the third try, her voice trembling despite the forced calm. Hello? I didn't need to hear what was said on the other end. I knew Officer Jalen Cruz wasn't one to mince words. He would have told her exactly what she needed to hear. There was now an active warrant in her name for forgery, fraud, and attempted grand theft, and her sister Simone was listed as a co-conspirator. Her hand shook as she held the phone to her ear. That's not possible, she whispered. No, that's not how this works. I haven't done anything. She paused, listening, then whispered again. No, he can't. He's lying. He's manipulating. She turned to me, eyes wide and glassy, like I could suddenly rescue her from a hole she dug with her own 2 hands. Griffin, what did you do? I didn't answer. I just raised an eyebrow. And that's when it hit her, the full weight of it. Her legs buckled. She staggered back, dropping the phone. It hit the tile with a crack and slid under the table. She reached for the edge of the island, missed, and collapsed to the floor, just crumpled like the strings had been cut. Her body hit the tile with a sound I'll never forget, a mix of flesh, bone, and disbelief. I didn't move. She lay there for a moment, dazed, trying to blink away whatever fog was overtaking her. I watched her try to sit up, only for her body to betray her again. Her hands trembled as they reached for anything solid. There was none. I picked up the phone. The line was still open. "Cruz?" I said. "Still there?" he asked, voice calm. "She's down," I said. "Didn't take it well. Didn't think she would." "Ambulance or cuffs first?" "Cuffs," I said. "She's conscious." "Copy that. Units are en route." I ended the call and placed the phone gently on the table, then crouched down to where Delilah was trying to catch her breath. Her skin had lost all color, her pupils dilated wide with panic. There was no trace of the woman who had strutted in here half an hour ago with a plan to erase me from my own life. "They had the messages," I told her quietly. "The documents, the fake deed. Marcus was wired. And your sister's signature? It matched 5 other cases Jalen already flagged. She's not just part of this. She's a repeat offender." Delilah's lips moved, but no sound came out. "You didn't just try to leave a marriage," I continued. "You tried to stage a heist. You used your love life as the getaway vehicle, and now you're out of gas." She blinked up at me, some pathetic little tear sliding down her cheek. "I didn't, Griffin. I didn't mean to." "Stop," I said flatly. "Save it for the judge." The sirens came next. Not loud at first, but unmistakable. The kind of sound you only mistake if you've never had anything to fear from it. She heard them too. Her body jerked toward the sound, then curled tighter, as if she could hide from what was already coming for her. 3 knocks hit the front door, sharp, official. I walked over and opened it. 2 officers stood there, including Jalen. He nodded at me, then stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. "Delilah Holt," he said, stepping into her line of sight. "You are under arrest for criminal fraud, forgery, and attempted grand theft. Please stand up." She didn't move. "Now," Jalen added. One of the other officers moved to assist. Delilah tried to protest, her voice breaking through in sobs and fragmented pleas, but it was all static. She was done talking. They lifted her to her feet, placed the cuffs on her wrists, and read her rights as she sobbed like a child caught stealing from her own mother. She looked back at me as they guided her toward the door. Desperation, betrayal, shock, but mostly disbelief. She still didn't understand how I outplayed her. That's the thing about storms. You don't always hear them coming, but when they arrive, nothing stands. They picked up Simone first. According to Jalen, she was lounging on her apartment balcony, sipping what looked like an overpriced smoothie, and scrolling through her phone like she hadn't just committed half a dozen felonies. When the officers knocked on her door and announced who they were, Simone had the audacity to act surprised. Not scared, surprised. She stood there in a matching yoga set, mouth slightly open, blinking like they'd confused her with someone else. But the moment they said the word forgery, that pretty little face cracked. She tried to close the door, even made it halfway, but they pushed through and had her cuffed before she could finish saying, "Wait, this is a mistake." By the time Delilah arrived at the precinct, wristbound and still shaking, they brought her face, to face with Simone in a windowless processing room. I wasn't in the room, but I saw everything from behind the mirrored glass. Delilah gasped the second she saw her sister. "Simone, what the hell is going on?" she blurted, voice high and frantic. Simone snapped her head up, narrowed her eyes like she just found out she wasn't the ringleader anymore. "What's going on? You tell me. You said everything was fine. You said it was airtight." Delilah took a shaky step forward, still handcuffed. "They're saying you forged documents. They have the documents," Simone hissed. "They showed me. Your buyer wore a damn wire. That whole deal was a setup, D. He played you, and you dragged me into it." I expected Delilah to defend herself, maybe to deny everything and try to make it sound like some tragic misunderstanding. But instead, she started crying. Not the silent, graceful kind. The messy, desperate kind that pulled your face into ugly contortions and didn't stop once it started. "I didn't know," she mumbled through sobs. He was so distant. I thought I could..." Simone rolled her eyes and sat down hard in the metal chair. Unbelievable! You burned your marriage and almost got us both indicted for a man who doesn't even love you. Delilah flinched like she'd been slapped. I leaned closer to the glass, arms crossed. Watching them unravel was like watching the final pages of a crime novel play out in real time. No more glamour, no more control, just two sisters choking on the consequences of choices they thought no one would ever uncover. Marcus showed up about 20 minutes later. He wore his badge today. I didn't ask him to. He offered, said he wanted Delilah to see it, wanted her to know exactly who played her. So when he walked past the holding room and Delilah caught a glimpse of the gold glint under his jacket, her face broke in a new way. "And Marcus?" she stammered, eyes wide, voice cracking. He turned, looked at her, and gave a single, devastating smile. "Surprise." She stepped forward, yanking against her cuffs like they might vanish if she just begged hard enough. "You lied to me. You forged your husband's signature," he said flatly. "Let's not talk about lies." Delilah's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Simone, still sitting, groaned. "You mean he was working with Griffin the whole time?" Marcus didn't answer her. He turned to me instead, behind the glass, and gave me a small nod. I nodded back. Delilah, suddenly desperate for someone to blame, swung toward the camera in the corner. She had no idea I was behind the mirror, but she looked right into the lens, like she was trying to reach through it. "This is his fault," she shouted. "Griffin, he's always been controlling. He wouldn't touch me. He made me feel invisible. He's punishing me." That was her angle. I saw it form in her eyes the moment Marcus walked away. She wasn't going to take this lying down. If she couldn't win legally, she'd try morally, spin the narrative, make me the villain in a story she wrote in ink only she could see. Too bad for her, facts don't bend for fiction. Outside the room, Heather was waiting with Jalen. She was reviewing the documents Simone signed, each one linked to the house, each one another nail in their legal coffin. "This is airtight," she said. "They'll push for a deal, of course. Plead out, but you'll be covered. Restitution, damages, maybe even punitive." Jalen nodded. The DA's already involved. Their best move now is cooperation, which they won't give. I added, at least not until they realize nobody's coming to save them. Heather didn't disagree. We watched for a few more minutes as the sisters melted into blame and betrayal, Delilah pacing, Simone slumped in defeat. It was strange how small they looked now, two women who had once been forces of chaos in my life. And now? Now they were nothing but a cautionary tale in handcuffs. Before I left, I turned one last time to the glass and looked Delilah in the eye, even if she couldn't see me. Her mascara was smeared, her blouse wrinkled, and her entire aura cracked. She didn't know it, but her mugshot had already been taken. The storm had passed. All that was left now was cleanup. The courtroom wasn't what you see on TV. No dramatic lighting, no gasps from a crowded gallery, just hard benches, cold floors, and the faint smell of disinfectant that clung to everything. Still, when Delilah walked in, it felt like a stage play was about to begin. She wore a black blazer and pencil skirt combo, classic, strategic, the kind that screamed, "I'm professional, not criminal." Her hair was pulled back so tight, it looked like she was holding herself together by strands alone. Simone followed 2 steps behind, face pale and lips pressed into a hard line. No matching outfits this time, no shared confidence, just 2 women standing trial for a scheme they were arrogant enough to think would stay secret. I didn't sit in the front row. I chose a spot near the back, flanked by Heather and Marcus. Heather was stone-faced, a tablet in her hand, fingers gliding through the organized evidence like a maestro preparing for a symphony of justice. Marcus leaned back in his chair, one ankle resting on his knee, exuding the same relaxed confidence he'd worn from day one. He'd done his part. Now it was our turn to make sure it stuck. Delilah glanced around the courtroom when she entered. I watched her eyes search the room, hesitating just slightly when they landed on me. She didn't look away immediately. She stared, almost like she expected to find pity there. But I didn't blink, didn't flinch. I just sat still and met her gaze until she turned forward again, shoulders straighter, but breath noticeably quicker. The judge was a woman in her 60s, with a sharp jawline and eyes that looked like they'd seen every excuse in the book. She didn't smile, she didn't posture. She simply called the session to order and motioned for the prosecution to begin. Heather rose like she'd been waiting for this day her whole career. "Your Honor," she began, "what we present today is not a simple case of miscommunication, nor is it a messy divorce gone bitter. This is calculated fraud. This is digital forgery. This is an attempt to steal a man's home, erase his identity from legal records, and walk away richer. And we have every message, every document, and every recorded conversation to prove it." She began to lay out the timeline, slowly, intentionally, like building a structure, brick by brick, from the first shady hotel meetings to the forged deed, to the fake cashier's check Marcus handed over, and finally to the moment Delilah fainted when she realized it had all been a setup. Heather hit every beat. Then she played the video. Delilah's conversation with Marcus in the hotel bar flickered to life on the screen. There she was, laughing, flipping through phone pictures of our home like she was showing off a souvenir. "He travels a lot," she said in the video. "This will be clean, quiet. He won't even know until it's too late." You could hear a pin drop in the courtroom. Delilah buried her face in her hands. Simone just stared at the floor. The defense attorney tried to recover. He stood up, cleared his throat, and began with a tired trope. "Your Honor, while the footage is certainly compelling, we must consider context. My client, Mrs. Holt, was under significant emotional distress. Her marriage was deteriorating. She was desperate, confused, manipulated." Heather didn't even wait for the judge's nod before rising again. "May I respond?" The judge motioned her forward. Heather stepped into the center of the room, holding up printed screenshots. "Is this desperation? This is a message Delilah sent the morning after she met with Marcus. Quote, 2 million in hand, and all he'll get is a thank you card." She turned to the judge. "Your Honor, that's not confusion. That's confidence. That's intent." Simone's lawyer tried to distance her from the core crime, claimed she didn't know what the documents were, claimed she was just doing her sister a favor. Then Heather pulled out the notary record logs. 5 other documents notarized by Simone in the past 6 months, all tied to questionable transactions, all under investigation. By the time she was done, the courtroom was thick with quiet disbelief. Even the judge seemed a little taken aback. After a pause, the judge leaned forward, fingers steepled. "Mrs. Holt and Ms. Green," she said, voice like gravel. "What I see here is not simply fraud. It is the exploitation of trust, the misuse of legal authority, and a complete lack of remorse. This court hereby voids the attempted sale of the Holt residence. All property rights revert solely to Mr. Griffin Holt." Delilah gasped audibly. Simone slumped in her seat. The judge continued. "Furthermore, based on the psychological evaluation, documented emotional harm, legal fees, and risk of financial displacement, I am awarding Mr. Holt a total of $175,000 in damages." It was over. Delilah covered her mouth like she might be sick. Simone looked ready to cry, but for once, there were no tears, just the crushing weight of reality closing in from all sides. I didn't smile, not in court, but inside, I burned with satisfaction. Not because I wanted to ruin them, but because they tried to erase me. And I reminded them, loud and clear, whose name was still on the title. I packed in silence, not because I was sad, but because I wanted to leave the house the way I entered it 10 years ago. Focused, quiet, deliberate. The court had officially returned the property to me, but it didn't feel like mine anymore. Not really. It felt like a stage that had seen too many acts, too many lies, too many performances in rooms that once held warmth. Every corner whispered memories I didn't ask to remember. Her laugh at the stove, the fight near the back door, Simone once sleeping on our couch after a hard week. Ghosts, all of them. And I was ready to stop living in a haunted house. 2 days after the verdict, I signed the closing papers on a coastal property. Nothing fancy, just a clean, solid house on a bluff where you could hear the waves before you saw them. It had a screened-in porch and a fireplace that still burned wood instead of gas, the kind of place you go to reclaim yourself, the kind of place you don't invite trouble to. Jared, my dog, rode in the passenger seat on the drive over, his head hanging out the window as the salty wind turned his ears into flags. He'd always been a quiet one, even more so these past few months. Dogs know. They feel the tension in the floorboards before it reaches our feet. And Jared had taken to barking at shadows lately, corners of the house where no one stood, doorways no one passed through. But as we pulled up to the new place, he just looked around once, gave a small whine, then settled back down. No barking, no pacing, just calm, like even he could sense that the storm had passed. I moved in with just the essentials, some clothes, my tools, a few framed photos of my parents, and my old drafting table. I left the furniture behind. It had seen too much. I wanted a clean slate, one where I could choose every detail again, this time for myself, not for anyone else. 3 days in, the first letter came, postmarked from the county jail. The return address had Delilah's name scrolled in handwriting I knew too well. I stared at it over coffee, debating whether to open it or toss it into the flames still crackling in the hearth. In the end, curiosity won. It always does. Inside was a 3-page letter written on lined paper. No perfumed stationery, no lipstick seals, just her voice and ink. "Griffin," it began, "I know you probably won't read this. I wouldn't blame you. I just needed to try. I'm sorry for everything. For Trey, for the house, for Simone. I was selfish. I didn't know how far I was falling until I hit the floor. You didn't deserve it. I know that now." She went on about how jail had stripped her of everything: comfort, status, pride. Said she missed the smell of our kitchen on Sunday mornings, that she wished we'd fought more instead of letting the silence grow so loud between us, that she would take it all back if she could. "I don't expect forgiveness," she wrote, "but I hope one day you can remember a version of me that didn't break you." I read it once, folded it, then tossed it into the fire without a word. Not out of anger, not even satisfaction. I just didn't need it. I didn't need her to explain what I'd already understood. 2 days later, another letter arrived, Simone's, shorter, sloppy. No apology, just denial disguised as remorse. "I didn't know it would go that far," she claimed. "Delilah said it was taken care of. I thought it was just a favor, not a crime. I'm not like her." Yes, she was. I burned that one too. Some doors aren't meant to be reopened. That first week in the new house, I slept better than I had in years. No pacing, no checking for her keys in the bowl by the door, no second guessing whether the woman beside me was still mine or already gone in spirit. Just peace. Real, hard-earned peace. I put up shelves in the garage, not because I needed them, but because I missed building something with my hands. I grilled burgers on the back deck and sat with Jared while the sun dipped into the ocean like a coin vanishing into a well. Every night, I closed the door gently behind me and locked it, not out of fear, but because it was mine to lock, my door, my threshold, my rules. Delilah called once from the jail's number. I let it ring until it stopped. She never tried again. Jared doesn't bark at shadows anymore. He sleeps through the night without scratching at the door. I think he knows what I've known since the first box hit the floor of this house. It's over. Really over. The final door didn't slam because someone was storming out. It slammed because I shut it myself and turned the bolt. And this time, it won't open for anyone who doesn't knock with truth. The ocean was louder in the mornings, waves colliding with the rocks below like they had something to prove. I liked that, the steady rhythm of it. Nature didn't ask for permission or pretend to be anything it wasn't. It just was. Brutal, honest, unapologetic. That's the kind of life I was building now. Marcus and I sat on the porch that overlooked the bluff. 2 steaming mugs of coffee, no cream, no sugar, just strong and bitter like the last few months. Jared lay between us, snoring lightly, belly full and twitching in his sleep. The sky was still waking up, streaked with a soft pink that barely kissed the water. It was peaceful, the kind of peace you feel in your bones, not because the noise is gone, but because you finally decided to stop letting it inside. "You played it smooth, Griff," Marcus said, nodding toward the cliffs. "Real clean. Could have torched the whole thing, but you kept it sharp, quiet, precise." I sipped the coffee, watching the tide roll in. "I wasn't trying to win," I said. "Not really." "No?" He raised an eyebrow. "No," I repeated. "I just wanted them to know they couldn't bulldoze me, couldn't write me out of my own story." He let that sit between us for a moment, the only sound being the sea and Jared's occasional grunt. "I get that," Marcus said finally. "You didn't go nuclear. You went surgical." I smiled at that. Exactly. Delilah and Simone thought I'd break, that I'd fall apart, lash out, do something reckless and give them the upper hand. But what they forgot was that I build things for a living. I understand pressure, load, fault lines. I know when something's about to collapse and how to make sure I'm standing on the right side of the rubble. People think breaking a man means stealing his money or torching his marriage, but they forget what really breaks a man is losing his sense of self, his name, his purpose, his footing. They tried to take all that from me, tried to redefine me with lies and greed and a handful of forged signatures. But I build foundations, and I always reinforce them with truth. The funny thing is, in the middle of it all, I kept waiting for a moment when I'd feel angry enough to scream, or sad enough to cry, or desperate enough to beg. But it never came. Not because I didn't feel anything, but because I knew I had already been mourning that marriage long before it ended. Delilah didn't destroy something sacred. She confirmed what I already suspected. It had died long before the paperwork caught up. I heard from her one more time, a voicemail I didn't pick up, but I let it record. "Griffin, I just wanted to say I know I ruined everything, and I don't know who I am without it. Without you. I see that now. I was wrong. I'm sorry. I didn't save it. I didn't erase it either. I let it exist in the cloud, digital clutter I no longer needed to carry. That was enough. I changed the locks on everything, the bank accounts, the storage units, even my social passwords. I built a firewall around my life the way I build them around my homes. Sturdy, reliable, code-driven. Nothing gets in unless it belongs. That includes people. There's a wooden sign over the porch now, carved by hand, sanded smooth. It reads, "Griffin Holt, my house, my rules." I didn't hang it for visitors. I hung it for me. A reminder that I get to decide what lives inside these walls now, what kind of man I am, what kind of peace I keep. People used to ask why I didn't retaliate louder, why I didn't go to the media or drag their names through the mud. Simple. Because I didn't need to make noise to prove I survived. I just had to keep building. This house, this life, this rhythm, it's mine now. And when the sun sets and the last light disappears behind that jagged horizon, I don't feel regret. I feel clarity. The kind that comes when you finally realize the worst thing that ever happened to you was also the best thing that ever set you free. So when Marcus stood to leave and clapped my shoulder, I didn't say goodbye. I said, "You know where to find me." He grinned. Always did. And when he drove off and the dust settled, I sat back down with Jared, poured another cup of coffee, and listened to the ocean declare itself over and over again. Relentless, real, and mine. just like everything else behind this final door.